Now returning to the hot seat for the final session before lunch. And I'm going to be joined by Nadav. Nadav is Director of Product and Strategy at Elsewhen, and we're going to be talking about customer centricity, and we're going back to AI in the age of AI. So if you can give a warm welcome to Nadav. Thank you so much. Just come on this one.
Thanks very much.
So thanks for joining. I guess, like all these discussions, good place to start is probably just a quick intro of who you are and what you do.
So, like you said, I'm Director for Product and Strategy at Elsewhen. Elsewhen is a digital product consultancy. We work mainly on the kind of larger side of creating new products, helping some big techs with their transformation programs. And I work with the product team.
Nice. And we're going to have to jump straight into it.
Straight in.
So could you outline a few examples of where you've had to use AI to drive customer centricity, and perhaps more recently?
Yeah, so maybe before that, I mean, we didn't talk about AI much this morning, I think. I think that the first person I heard talking about AI was Mark, somewhat towards the end of the previous panel. And so we think about that split between or kind of that move between machine learning, kind of traditional AI, into LLMs, and sort of more generative AI. And we as a product team, we look, and we actually been quite lucky to work with different products, right? And so a recent example, we worked with a coffee and beverages drink. They have quite a big app here in the UK. It's quite broad. It is in use by millions of users. And we try to get a sentiment of what the app is doing outside the classic performance of the app, right? So if you think about how you'd go about that, we've created a small piece of code that went onto the app stores. We've downloaded thousands of comments about these apps, thousands of reviews of what people said. And that then becomes an interesting exercise. You take these comments and you upload them into ChatGPT 4, right? Which I'm, again, surprised we didn't talk much about. And you put that onto ChatGPT, and the exercise with the right prompts was to get to a point where we get a holistic picture of what this brand's clients are talking about, what users care about, where do they see challenges. Some of these were classic within the app, data related. A lot of other stuff was outside of that realm. Was what is the store experience? What happens when you go and you try to claim your free coffee when you get to the store? How products might or may not be available, right? So there's a whole bunch of data that you could get from this public information. The other thing which kind of maybe that point linking towards is how you could do that on a private cloud, right? So within us, when we look at different models, we look at things like LangChain, we look at things like Cohere, and these are tools that allows businesses today to very quickly prototype and build simple engines in which you can take your internal data. And when I talk about users, I talk about internal and external users. You take your internal data and you start manipulating that data and getting some sort of output that otherwise would have taken a long time to produce. So that is maybe just one example of how you do that, and an exercise that could go for days or weeks, be performed in literally a matter of hours.
What are some of the common customer centricity challenges or pitfalls organizations face, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about transformation and customer centricity, not that much. When we think about driving change, many organizations, and I think we heard about it today, are still very much top-down. A lot of the decision-making is almost ignoring the customer, right? Is ignoring the person, that individual that would be using the tools at the end of that change. So we still see a lot of top-down. We see that in large organizations actually trickle down into the organizational silos, right? So how do you bring that voice of the customer, how do you bring those learnings and you break into those silos? So we just had an engagement with a big telco client. And you see so many parts of the business not talking to each other, right? And sometimes a lot of our customer journeys, a lot of the things that we need to transform, they start in one side of the organization and they go into other places. Now, all these pitfalls, all these disconnects are still very much in play, for sure, and we see that.
And then how does AI come into that in terms of those challenges and getting it right?
So I think before we talk specific just on AI, right, we look at how businesses could start solving for these problems, right? How do you create an educational program? How do you create a program to listen to what customers are saying, to see what they come up with? And if you look at some of the simplest tools, right? So in marketing or in product, we talk a lot about user personas. And with AI, that tool could become super robust. We could start creating what we call synthetic personas. I made a quick experiment a couple of days ago. How many people in the room use ChatGPT to upload an image and actually get ChatGPT to talk to you about that image?
I'm using
One, 2.5, 3, 4 hands within 200 people-ish. So I did the experiment the other day, and I uploaded my own picture, the one you see behind, onto ChatGPT. And I actually want to read out quickly how ChatGPT worked from that picture. I asked, what can you tell me about that person as a user persona, right? Based on that just simple photo. And it says, there's a person in the mid-30s to early 40s. That's about right. They work in the creative technology industry. I then asked about what are their interests, and we talked about leadership, podcasts, and stuff that I may be reading, and art exhibitions. I had a 10-15 minutes conversation with ChatGPT on a single picture. What can you do with that on an organizational scale? Right. I think when you start thinking about these ideas and how you bring them into businesses, how you bring that into larger sets of data, because that has a lot of problems to it. And I'm kind of putting the whole ethical discussions, prejudice, all the things that obviously have led to that to the side for a second. But if you do that on a larger scale, you could start bringing your customers, right, into your discussions. And the way to do that, even with just ChatGPT, right, if you create these personas and you start interviewing or you start testing your ideas with that machine and ask that machine to think as James, that was the name of my ChatGPT persona, right? How would I react to different things? How would I react to different product offerings? How would I react to different experiments that you might want to try out? All these things, if you start breaking these silos and bringing those personas, could become super powerful. And a lot of people in the room are sitting on quite impressive, I would imagine, sets of data that are related to their own customers, right? So you know who your customers are. You've been collecting this data for years now, I think. Someone said earlier that it's a 4-year exercise to create that data lake and know much more about customers. So these are all sorts of different opportunities to start using that information to bring the customer closer into your decision making.
Nice. And then to kind of close out, what would be your kind of key takeaway or call to action for businesses looking to utilize AI for greater customer centricity?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting point in time, right? We are in that point where some businesses would choose to probably become, to just manage AI, whilst others are going to choose to be leaders in the space of AI. And both options, I think, are valid, right? They're okay. You could decide this is not for me at the moment. We are in a much earlier stage on our journey. At some point in future, when that space has matured further, we can then start asking how can we implement AI. I'm actually going to argue that if you choose to become a leader in that space, there's going to be a long-term, sustainable advantage, right? There's a competitive advantage to be created here. And the barrier, we talked about it a little bit, are far lower than they were a couple of years ago, right? So if you imagine a couple of years ago, you had to get the very expensive machine learning engineers. It's been taking a long time. Data wasn't always clean. To start experimenting with AI today is very easy, right? ChatGPT 4 subscription is about 18 or 19 pounds a month, and at almost any organizational scale, that should not be a barrier. But if you think about leaders, with those three hands that we saw a couple of minutes ago, I'm going to argue that one way of getting into that space is us as leaders starting to work with AI, starting to experiment, starting to play out with tools. So it's not that scary thing or kind of that buzzword. A lot of these tools are easy to access, and we can start playing with them. The other thing is creating, and we talked all about culture, right? Is creating that culture that would allow individuals within the business, and again within safety and cybersecurity rules, to have a play with AI. Again, like we have been in several conversations last couple of weeks with insurance companies, and that's traditionally a space that is moving very, very slow. And when you get into that space with AI, there's quite a few opportunities, because insurance is also a business of words, right? There's a lot of words involved in creating policies. There's a lot of conditions that you might want to bring. And what I think separates many of these companies today is that some of them are very, very advanced. You see some insurers playing with AI, trying to get the policies into AI chats. They're creating their internal tools, whilst others not so much, right? Others are not there. So leaders across the board, I think, should create that environment for experimentation, and actually honing that fact that not all of those experiments would be successful, and creating that opportunity and encouragement almost for internal small failures, right? I think we do a lot of that ourselves, obviously. So you can reach out with the guys at the back of the room, but that's not to say that. Create that environment for people to try things, to fail, to upload the photos to ChatGPT and see what happens, and have that conversation.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Nadav. As Nadav said there, Elsewhere Now, one of the sponsors of the event, and they got a booth in the exhibitor area, so if you want to have any follow-up conversation or explore any of those ideas, do grab Nadav and any of his team. But thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good.